We have a quorum, we have a recorder. So we'll call the meeting to order at 7:05 based on my technical difficulties. Looking at the agenda, I have not seen anything that I would like to bring up for changes. I don't know if anybody else on the commission has any issue with this agenda tonight or not. Hearing none, we'll keep going. So underneath administrative matters, the first item is to approve the minutes of April 20th, which I believe everybody got a link to them. Anybody care to make
Move to accept.
Okay. Any discussion? So just all crickets there. So everybody that's in favor, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? So it passes unanimously. The next item is the zoning administrator's report. I talked to Chris briefly. He said there's some things in the work, but he didn't really have anything to report out this month. He's under the impression that there might be some stuff going on that might be newsworthy next month. Which kind of begs, do we want to check in with him on a monthly basis, quarterly basis? What's your pleasure there?
Well, if there's any kind of news, and I think it's not too great a burden for him to report monthly. If there's nothing, that's fine, but things seem to pick up case-wise during the summertime anyways. So I think it's best we hear more often rather than not.
Okay.
I feel that way as well.
Okay, so I'll keep pulsing him on a monthly basis and see if he's got stuff that's report worthy then. The next item is miscellaneous correspondence. I sort of put that in there because sometimes there's email directed towards, I guess, me being the chairman, that might more often than not be gee whiz information, but I think wouldn't be bad just to, in passing, have you understand some of the back channel correspondence. And I sent out an email hastily this morning with a email outlining Middlebury College's, all I can think of is, programs for students to work with communities, different entities, public to develop projects that they can work through as part of their studies. I put that out there. It doesn't really come up with anything, at least in my mind, that we would want to jump onto that or try to jump into that program with. But I think it's good to be aware of it, and if there's something there that we think we want to develop, it might be a resource for us. Melissa, you look like you wanted to say something.
No.
Okay, John.
Yes. Just as a bit of background, I've worked with the college during my days with the United Way. So I think this is definitely great information for us to have and kind of keep in our back pocket, because I know the kids are more than willing to help out and volunteer, whether they're getting class credit for it or not. They'll, if we need something from them, we can certainly get in touch with them, and they'll do their best to accommodate.
Okay, thanks for
That's
that.
been my experience.
Okay, great. I've got it here on the agenda. We still do have a open position. I don't know if anybody's thought about that, or I think we kind of talked about this last time. We need a young female that's rurally orientated outside of town. So to kind of like smooth out our demographics. But anyway, there's that.
I need a wide receiver out of the NFC East.
Yeah. So that brings us to I started putting a bunch of continuing business in here. And then this month as our quote unquote organizational meeting, and if we spend some time looking at the policies and procedures, it may consume most of what we want to do tonight. So I made a specific item for organizational meeting, starting with a discussion about a review of policies and procedures. There was a markup that Jeff and I worked on that went out to everybody. And I'm hopeful that everybody took a look at it as well as developed some of their own input. So I'm I'm sort of thinking just to kind of keep it organized, if you will, that we just go through by item and work our way down through the document. Does anybody have a better way of doing it?
That makes sense. Do you want to share it on a share screen, Kevin?
Boy, yeah, I would like to share it. Let me see if I can.
Well, if you make me a co-host, I could.
Look at that.
Is it there?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yep, there it is.
So what I wanted, so all of a sudden my screen, which I've heard people complain about this before that do meetings, is all of a sudden I'm not seeing everybody. So as we go through this, please speak up if you. Oh, wait a minute, I did it. I think. Or as usual, just speak up if you are feeling that you're not getting attention. So the first a topic is, there's a couple things that I suggested or that are suggested is there's a lot of punctuation and capitalization, if you will, for proper names that just throughout the document. The other one is suggesting is to number each section, and some of I believe I got it numbered right, but as we go along, if some of it doesn't make sense to you, let's talk about it. So the first section, or the mission, would become the first section, and there is in yellow a reference to a now outdated town plan. So obviously there's concern that we need to do something about that.
Does the new town plan state our mission? I didn't look to see. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm happy to take a look at it later, and if there is, to just do a short. It's just one sentence. Maybe it's the same for all I know.
Or the other option could be is just to leave that out. I mean, as a mission statement in the policies and procedures, that certainly makes sense. It's just getting rid of the time sensitive information.
Yeah.
So my thought would be to either remove it. It should be in line with the town plan. There is a purpose section there still. Or to just say also refer to town plan for purpose if there was to be anything, and not necessarily have the date involved in it.
And I was thinking either that or add, if we were going to put something in there, to say the latest revision, whatever the date of the latest revision of the town plan is, that supersedes all previous versions, something to that effect. But I like, Rob, I think cleaned it up a lot easier.
So we would take, if I understand what you're proposing, Rob, is we take that paragraph and just basically refer to the town plan, or would we pull it out as Jeff suggested?
I'm up for either. If we pull this out, I don't know that we should have a mission section necessarily here. But if you were to, my comment was more focused towards if you wanted a reference to the plan, that
The
it should
current
not be
plan,
date
current
specific.
plan doesn't have a mission. It has a purpose and a vision.
Vision, yeah.
Vision is a full page. The purpose is shorter. Um, We could just take the purpose. It's a short paragraph with a couple of bullets. Put it in there. If you
Which,
want.
many of which are actually covered in the mission of the Planning Commission. That sentence right there encompasses, does it encompass all four? I think it encompasses all four of those bullets anyway.
I'm trying to see if it does.
Let's see here.
Looks like it's worded slightly differently, but
It's
looks
worded
like
Slightly
that.
differently, but it's very close.
Well, it's a little different. I mean, we could just take something from the current plan and put it in under purpose instead of mission, or
Sure.
So are we okay with, are you willing to do that, Jeff?
sure, I'll get something up and send it around.
Okay, so we're willing to have Jeff rework that to coincide with the plan purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. On to the second paragraph, membership. There's a question as to whether the zoning administrator should be specifically stated as an ex officio member, which, so put that out there and see what the appetite is for that comment.
I put that question in because Chris was at all of our, seems to me, all of our previous meetings with that. Maybe that's just because we were doing the plan at the time. I don't know if he normally shows up at meetings.
I think the few discussions I've had with him is as we get into reg modifying the regs of the plan, it makes a lot of sense for him to be involved from a perspective of being the boots on the ground, if you will. As we get into some visionary planning, if you will, he's not sure what his value added is, and as a town employee, he's on the clock when he attends meetings as well. So is that a prudent use of town money for him to attend meetings for visionary stuff? So I think he's very comfortable with and coming into meetings as we want him to, but we also need to understand if he's adding value for
Sure.
the cost, if you will.
Mhm.
So I guess maybe it's as needed, sort of. I don't know if you need to state that or not. The zoning administrator will attend meetings in an advisory
I-
capacity as needed.
I think it would be better left out instead of muddying it, trying to define it if it's not an official specific role.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. I was just asking the question.
Move that we remove that sentence.
Sure.
So I didn't check, but with the first and second paragraph, does anybody else have any input as to changes to consider? Okay, we'll move on. So far we've got, we will not add the zoning administrator in 2, and we've got Jeff wordsmithing 1. 3, I'm sorry, did somebody want to say something? Three sounds like there's not a lot of discussion there unless somebody has a burning issue. Moving on to four. There was a discussion, and I think at our last meeting, we decided not to have a clerk. So the term clerk is highlighted for possible removal. And then the organizational meeting, which is currently in May, there was a discussion, does it make more sense to have it coincide with terms or some other date?
If the appointments are March to March, is that correct?
Yes.
Then I think it makes sense to do it in April once terms are completed or initiated.
Any other input?
I guess would it be better March or April? Because April would give us the same situation we just had. If the current chair's term ends in March and they're not staying on, then you would have to do what we did this last time, is find a way to conduct it in April.
Is March before, is it the start of March or the end of March at the term's end?
I think it's the last meeting. I think it's, well, I don't know.
The select board does not crisply change depending on input and whatnot, but I would think they, at their organizational meeting technically, which would be the first Monday of March or the first Monday after election, would be the point where terms are reviewed, if you will, and acted on. So our meeting being the third Tuesday of the month would most likely be after the select board had their organizational meeting, I think. Yes. Anybody
I think
else?
I think that if you're trying to avoid you're trying to do it before the end of terms, February would make sense. Yeah, although that's probably not, there's a lot going on then. That way you just avoid the whole beginning of the month, end of the month, when does the term end? You're in a different month.
Well, the problem, does anybody want to comment on that?
Yeah,
Let's hear what your problem
February
is.
makes sense.
So if the chair assumes their duties in March and it's for a year, then technically their last month would be February, because that would be a year. I think that's what Rob is getting at. Is that right, Rob?
Yes, generally to try to avoid the gap in having a meeting without a chair.
So if you wanted to have a meeting, the current chair to hold that meeting where a new chair or a chair is picked, then yeah, February sounds right.
I agree with that. I'm curious what Kevin sees as a problem.
Well, the issue I see is in February, you would have terms up that wouldn't be reappointed, that could influence how you go ahead.
You might have new members.
Organizational meeting,
You might have new and different members in March.
potentially so.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, and I'm not sure we should do it earlier than March. I guess the question is, that's just my point of view, but I guess the question is how far up do we move it to the appointment?
Well,
Appointments.
so one way to I think to resolve that would, well, I don't know. You
I mean,
could,
the vice chair could run that next meeting unless they are also ending their term.
oh, shit. Oh, wait, okay, no, it's okay. It's resolved. If you go down a couple of paragraphs to the second page, the first paragraph of the actual text says the terms of all officers shall begin on the date of the annual meeting, but officers shall hold office until their successors have been elected.
Well, that didn't happen.
Unless they are not an active member of the planning commission.
Unless they're not on it anymore, right?
So Jim had his hand up. Do we want, are we okay with having a citizen, give his comment during the meeting? So what would you like
Yeah.
to say, Jim? You're muted.
Just as a point of suggestion, the select board's terms end on town meeting day. So I would suggest that you hold your first meeting after they have their first meeting. Because they would be responsible for making any reappointments, correct?
Yes,
So when they have their first organizational meeting after town meeting day, you guys should hold yours the next day after that.
that's, okay. Because that would solve the issue of our March meeting getting ahead of their organizational meeting.
Right.
So we would hold our organizational meeting our first normal meeting after the select board reorganizes.
And there you go. Problem solved. Bye.
Thank you.
The check's in the mail, Jim.
And when do they have their organizational meeting after town meeting?
Their first meeting after town meeting is their organizational meeting.
So that would be in,
Well, they're on
they're not on a monthly schedule, right?
they're on it every other week. So it's likely most of the time, except for months with 5 Sundays in them or whatever, that they would meet before we do. But I think to me, that makes a lot of sense what Jim had proposed. I'd like to hear from Mr. Sayer too. He's gone through this a few times on this board.
Well, I apologize. I've had some conflicts on my end here, but thanks for asking, Kevin. Let me just try to get rid of some of the conflict here. We've always figured out a way to make it work one way or another. But as I understand it, the issue we're addressing is what if a chairman or chairperson, I should say, for whatever reason, resigns or leaves before before his or her replacement is appointed. Is that the issue, or have I missed something, which I often do?
I believe that's the issue, and there's verbiage in here somewhere that appointment can only be at the next annual meeting, if you will, organizational meeting. And then the vice chair would carry on as the chair in that interim time.
Yep.
And then, of course, we're a little bit gun shy because both our chair and vice chair went off the board at the same time this last.
Yes, okay. Well, that's a very rare situation. I can't recall when it's ever happened, but if it had happened before, we would have elected a temporary chair or appointed somebody to run the meeting until the board could be officially reconstituted. That's just my experience and my opinion, but I'm amenable to whatever you folks would like to do.
So,
I think Jim had a very good suggestion. Is there somebody that could put that in words for a motion?
so we could, so I guess the question there, Tom, would be, do we want to make a motion on every single point, or do we want to collectively approve if everybody seems to be agreeable at the end for the entire document?
Fine with me. It just saves time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is everybody kind of agreeable with what Jim had suggested? Anybody opposed to that? Okay, so that will take care of that one. We will make it such that the organizational meeting is after, first meeting after the select board's organizational meeting. There is a paragraph in yellow here that is being suggested that we just remove it. Anybody have strong feelings either way on that? Well,
It kind of makes me flash back to my divorce decree.
Basically, it's telling the chair and the vice chair they have to be friends.
yeah,
If they're not
Yeah,
friends-
find ways-
If they
find
are
ways to
friends,
get
they
along.
don't need it, and if they're not friends, it's not gonna do anything. So
Right, exactly.
so
Well, I think it tells people though that there is some coordination and that, I mean, I think in the event that the chair and vice chair have irreconcilable differences, that you can get rid of that. But I think we, should just have that little bit that tell people they're talking and you see what I mean? It's just a basis of how it's going to work.
so that,
To me, though, it just kind of looks like a common sense.
Well,
Yeah,
that,
I know. I said the common sense phrase. Yep. But I think with this group, I think I think we can play nice. I know, but in future, it may be we may have to spell everything out.
yeah, it's better to have it there than not. I mean, like that in the event of, I think that can be gotten rid of. That sounds a little
it all seems like overkill to me. I
too
mean,
much.
it's the chair and the vice chair have to talk to each other by phone before they finalize the agenda. Well, if they need to, they will, and if they don't need to,
Yeah.
Kevin and I exchanged a number of emails. We didn't talk by phone, Kevin.
technically we didn't, did we?
No.
Why can't we just have that first sentence and end it at the comma? I mean, just to say that they'll coordinate. That's up to them. How they coordinate, email, in person, on the phone, whatever.
So my take on this is that I'm not hung up on any of this. But that last part of in the event of irreconcilable
Yeah.
differences does actually act as sort of a procedural of what happens if they are stuck at an impasse of how to move forward. That's my only take on it, but I'm not stuck on any
That's
of it.
true. Yeah.
To me, it does seem a little prescriptive. We would hope that everyone would be mindful of the feelings, the goals, the views of other people on the entire commission, not just the chair and vice chair. So I wouldn't mind seeing the whole section disappear, the whole yellow highlighted area. But
Yeah, it would be nice if everybody was all nice to everybody and we didn't need any kind of instructions. That would be wonderful.
Well, if it would, but I think this is unduly prescriptive instruction.
That's what I was saying, just have it in there that they will coordinate, and that's all you need. There's no, you have to do this or do that.
I think that's sort of there anyway, but, you know.
If-
Agree. I'm
If-
agreeable to taking it out altogether. Move it.
So, yeah, should we take a thumb poll on this one? So everybody's in favor of taking it out?
I don't know, I think it's gonna come back to bite us eventually. I'm sure it will, but if everybody else wants it, then go ahead.
And then anybody opposed to taking it out?
I think it should just be modified, but
Yeah.
the majority is, I'll go with the majority.
Okay, so it'll come out.
You're gonna regret it, I think, but, you know, can always be put back in.
It can be always put back in next year. So the other thing to keep in mind with this document
Yeah.
is this is a high level document, and there's, you know, if there becomes the necessity to have this kind of a working detail, it should be in a tier document system as opposed to this level of a document as well. But anyway, so that's that paragraph.
Okay, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Schedule of meetings. So there is a suggestion to add a paragraph that relevant documents are to commission members at least a week before the meeting, which in the two meetings I prepared for, I can tell you that's a challenge.
You came close, Kevin. You came very close.
Yeah, but I understand, and I'm not disputing that shouldn't be in there. Any comments?
I'd say keep it in there, but make it an
Yeah.
aspiration.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe you can say,
I'd be comfortable with 48 hours. I mean, you know, just again, for your sanity, Kevin, you know, again, because things do come up and things do happen. And we're always going to be adding things, you know, or maybe taking things out last minute. And I think the first part of the meeting, we cover that topic anyway. And we say, do we need to add anything to the agenda, or do we need to take anything out of the agenda? I think that would cover that. And, you know, if we leave that sentence in there, fine. But yeah, like I think Jeff said, put an asterisk next to it. I mean, if you can get it to us before, that'd be great.
Melissa?
I would, yeah, I mean, I would like to have the documents a week. I don't need the agenda a week before. So I don't know if you can change it and just say, take agenda out.
Well,
And, you know, because that, for me, 48 hours is my busy, you know, weekend and Monday. I don't, you know, I kind of need it a week before if possible.
That's cool. Sorry about that,
I
Melissa. I
think-
didn't think.
That's all right.
but I think if we frame it as aspirational, that might be help. And as far as
Yeah.
as far as the documents, you know, having prepared agendas for this organization and some other ones, the agenda drives the documents. So
Yeah.
so separating one from the other is not a big deal. But I certainly think this is reasonable to attempt to.
So my take on it is that leave it as it's worded as should instead of shall. So it's a recommendation instead of a requirement. And because the earlier we get that stuff, the easier it is to be prepared, especially having busy weekends.
Okay, so it sounds like there's generally favorable, everybody's in favor of that one? Good.
Yep.
So 6, quorum. Backing up to the agenda, somebody made a comment about changing things on the agenda. That's kind of a slippery slope because your agenda is tells the public what you're going to do at the meeting, and if you substantially change that agenda, you haven't given notice to the public about what your business is going to be. So there's, like I said, it's kind of a slippery slope. You go down through and make sure that they're not significant changes, like you're pulling stuff You can pull stuff out, but you can't put big stuff back in, so anyway, it's just a comment. Quorum was just a clarification if it's the full board as authorized, if you will, as opposed to the number of members that are active on the board. For instance, we've got 8 members right now. There's a time when I first came on, I think there was like 6 members and everybody had to show up or something, to get your, to get
There
your,
were a couple of weeks we had 5.
yeah. So that was just a clarification there. I don't know if anybody has any strong feelings either way.
Well, what does full membership mean? A 9-person?
It means the complement of the delegated board, which is 9 people.
So maybe that should be changed to a majority of the active membership or current membership?
Actually, it's a state statute. If you have
It is, okay.
if you have a board or a regulatory thing, you have to go against the authorized number of people on the board. So yeah, I often thought about skating on that one, but it's there's some regulatory issues there.
Okay.
Rules. Going down, there is.
Kevin, I hate to ask you, but is there any way you can make that a little bigger? I can't, I can't see it that well.
Let's see if I can.
The little slider at the bottom.
There we go. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay.
I can see far, I can see close, but mid-range is getting difficult.
And second, yeah, tell me about it. Rules. There is a highlighted section that is something that we should consider entertaining whether to keep or not. Anybody have any strong opinions either way or opinions? So if there are no opinions to keep it, we should get rid of it then.
Seems to be a reference to the last plan, right?
Yeah.
Since it was written before the current one.
So moving down a little bit further, there's some word changes in this section. There's some of the stuff that is being suggested taken out is like we're trying to do, or as opposed to we should be doing. The record book of relevant communications to me is a wide open can of worms because our official documents are meeting minutes.
Yeah, just meeting minutes makes sense there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where are we, Kevin, on this one?
So we're on the paragraph where it starts. There's a bullet, more specific information in advance about each meeting's agenda. This is Bristol Planning
Oh,
Commission.
right. Okay, I see it, right.
And then it says has increasingly tried to, it should say, we just plain old communicate.
Communicate, yeah.
And then, our actions are available in meeting minutes. And then we haven't determined we do it as far as having topics. So anybody strong opinion either way? Okay, move on to the next one. So 7.2 open meeting laws. This section is highlighted because it talks to me a lot about when the planning commission was doing quasi judicial hearings, which will be very infrequent. if ever, as the way we're currently set up. So I looked at maybe changing that a little bit about comment periods and that sort of thing to hopefully add flexibility on how we take comment.
I'm good with the change with that small deletion.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Going down, suspension of agenda, 7.3. I'm not, I can't fathom what the intent of this section was. If you suspend your agenda, your meeting's over. And maybe that's what they wanted to do.
That's, yeah, that's good.
Well, that, Kevin, that's the counterpart or the example of how Robert's Rules of Orders are normally followed in most public bodies. So it's a normal provision. It's only used in extraordinary circumstances. But you can suspend your rules
Yeah.
if you get a 2/3 vote of the people there.
I mean, if there's some kind of, are you talking like if there's some kind of general emergency or town, something going on that
That would be an example.
nothing,
Melissa.
yeah, you're sort of saying, we're not gonna have the meeting this month because of whatever
That would be an example,
is
or
happening.
um, that would be one extreme example, and the other extreme would be something like we were discussing earlier, where there was an oversight, something was mentioned, was not included in the agenda, for example. Let's get more specific. Kevin mentioned a slippery slope. It's a good warning. And so let's say somebody raises as a point of order, we're on the slippery slope, like Kevin warned us we would be. How are we going to deal with it? Are we not going to discuss it? That's one option. Or are we going to suspend the rules? That would be the other one. So that pretty well covers the spectrum. I have no objection to it staying in there.
Yeah.
So
Does that,
That's
does
why.
that cover the entire agenda, or someone can say, we shouldn't talk about whatever this, point?
It
The
it
third
covers-
thing we're supposed to talk about, we can't talk about that now because of whatever concerns that person has.
That would be yet another example. It's
Okay.
covers
It's not like the whole agenda or nothing. It's
you
like-
right. You frame the motion the way you want it to be, and the test is that, or the theory is that if 2/3 of the members think it's a good idea, then it's probably a good idea. If more than 1/3 of the members think it's not a good idea, then it doesn't pass.
Tom, did you
I'd
have
agree,
your,
I would agree to leave it in.
so I guess
Me
the thing I was hung up on is agenda. So Bill's talking about suspension of rules, Robert's rules, which maybe it's the same thing, but I wasn't thinking initially that would be the same thing as suspending your agenda. So if you suspend your agenda,
Well,
You're right, Kevin.
Yeah.
I was overgeneralizing. Sometimes there's a catch-all suspension of rules for everything, any rule that's in this document. But you're right. It's
So-
under the heading of suspension of an agenda, and the same principles would apply except just for the agenda.
So would it make more sense if we were, as we entertain this, it would be suspension of rules or agenda?
it would have to be agenda, wouldn't it? If you suspended rules, then there wouldn't be a need for 2/3 majority. I mean, you're kind of like, I mean, why can't maybe it should say suspension of a portion or a portion of the agenda or the agenda in whole, depending on what the person making the motion is,
Right. I
one.
think it's all right
And
at
it still
this
takes
point.
2/3, so.
Yes.
And then Jeff, I think you had your hand, or you were,
Well, I was wondering, so what happens if I suddenly said now, oh, I don't like the way this is going, I want to suspend the agenda? What would happen?
You would have to get a second to your, I'm assuming you're making a motion to that effect. You'd have to get a second. There would be a debate, I believe. Yes, I believe this is a debatable motion. And then you'd have to attract 2/3 of the members to support your motion. And
Right.
if you didn't have very good reasons, you probably wouldn't get 2/3.
Well, what would I be asking for? Would I be asking for just to change I could be just asking to change the order of the items, or I could be saying we shouldn't discuss this particular item entirely, or any of those?
Any of those.
Yeah.
Any way you want to frame the motion.
Okay. So it's basically saying I want to change the agenda during the middle of the meeting.
Or at the beginning.
Yeah, or in some fashion or other.
Yeah. Yep.
So it doesn't mean the meeting ends, Kevin. It means we just not following the agenda.
that's where I get hung up is if you start talking about something that's not warned as an agenda item, you're running into trouble. But I understand now more why it's in here, and my concern is not as great as it was before, because ultimately it'd be up to the chair. If there's something suspended in the agenda, it'd be up to the chair to say whether it could, well, no, could the chair say whether it could be moving forward or not, given the fact that it may not be properly warned?
Well, that would be something for the membership to debate and vote on.
Yes, that's correct. And if the chair rules, which he or she can do, then there can be a motion to overrule the chair. And I think that might take more than a simple majority, but I could be wrong about that. So there's all kinds of different branches you can take off the trunk of this tree, but I think you're getting the idea.
So
If it's a minor deviation from the printed or published agenda, then if there's no objection from the members, normally that's consent, that's silent consent. But if somebody is troubled by that, and sometimes this is stated in the beginning of a meeting or by the chair from time to time, if someone is troubled by that, then they can raise a point of order that can be debated and informed, perhaps by the chair. And then there may be a motion to suspend at the end of that debate, which then would require 2/3. But normally, most all of this is, as someone said earlier, really just common sense and common courtesy. If somebody says, well, wait a minute, I forgot to say this when we were talking about the previous issue, normally we'd all say, okay, what was it you wanted to say? Or if somebody else says, well, I think this is related to something that's down 2 items on the agenda, I'd like to make my point right now. We normally would consent. If it gets into a heated discussion where emotions rise and tempers flare, well, then that's when we turn to these rules. But we really probably should take a deep breath and try to figure out another way anyhow.
So what's the overall mood?
I think it can stay in.
Yeah,
Okay,
stay.
if everybody in agreement,
I
okay,
understood your point, Kevin, but it's not necessarily to discuss something. It could be to not discuss something.
right.
To
So,
say,
yeah,
well,
Yeah.
and
Bill's,
that would be what you'd have to talk about if it was.
yeah, Bill's provided good perspective on the protocol of that. So that stays in. And 7.5 records, just a clarification that anything official is in meeting minutes. Technical assistant, there's a sentence that's used currently using the planning commission for technical assistance. I think that's not totally accurate, perhaps. Maybe there's a better way of saying that. So what's the pleasure here?
I mean, they certainly helped us in the new plan, but we don't have an active ongoing advisory relationship, do we, right now?
I think it's all by contract, as far as I can understand.
Or the special services, there's a contract, yes. I would suggest that we think about the ongoing relationship that comes from the annual payment that the town makes to the Regional Planning Commission in support of the organization as a forum and as general planning for the whole county. But how about this? How about if we change the word currently to often or usually? The point being, we can use, and we have over the years used other consultants, other businesses or enterprises to advise us and give us technical assistance. But we always have the right to call the Regional Planning Commission for a base level of assistance. It's kind of like, I think think of them as being on retainer. But if you use too much, then you need a special contract.
So I have a wording suggestion, and you could just say, the planning commission may request assistance from the Addison Regional Planning Commission as needed.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me too.
Is that agreeable with everybody? Okay. So I'm a little bit embarrassed at this point, Peggy. I had intentions of making notes, but I'm assuming you're doing a better job than I could possibly do. Thank you. I'm frozen here. Hold on. Yeah. So the next one is an annual open retreat, which is pretty specific on how that is organized. If according to the current language, we would be determining who would be organizing this thing at this organizational meeting. So I guess my question is do we want to be that formal and do we want to take that action at an organizational meeting?
Hey, Bill, when was the last time that one of these was held? Do you recall?
I have no recollection of any such.
When Grover Cleveland was president.
Probably. Well, some might say every meeting is a retreat.
Excuse me, I have a family medical issue. I have to answer this phone call.
So,
Hello. Hi, honey, how are you?
Jeff, you're not muted.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So Rob, do you have a follow-on question with that?
I think that we may want to remove the whole retreat section unless everybody thinks that we should start doing this, because I know that we have not done it in the 4 years that I've been a member, but I don't know if anybody else has the feeling that we should be doing this.
I would agree to remove it.
I mean, wouldn't this be a good thing to do when, well, I guess new members come on at different times, I guess. I was just thinking at the beginning, just do it at the beginning of the year, or, like in March. I don't know. I'm just thinking of new people, and it's really difficult to really get, I still feel like I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm just, going with one thing at a time that we're doing. And it would be nice to have like an overview kind of gathering of people, of the members.
Anybody else? Of course, there's always the option, if it's not in here, you can always do it as well.
Right. Yeah. Because if it's in here, it's supposed to be a requirement, I guess. But it says if feasible. So.
So what's the pleasure? Take the whole thing out or modify it? Thumbs up to
Say take it all out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. If you're not doing it, there's no point in being there.
Robert's rules, that section, there's nothing controversial there. Conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Changes to procedure, that's what we're working on tonight. So that is the completion of the review of the document. So I think at this point, unless there's a further discussion or desire to look at each piece, I think I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the changes as we've discussed. It's understanding that Jeff is going to wordsmith the first paragraph, and we'll informally agree on that at some point. So
I moved.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
okay, now I don't know if it's a tricky part or not, but we need 2/3 majority to approve it. So everybody, that's any further discussion? Everybody that's in favor, please say aye. Or raise your hand. How many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll say yes. So I'll say yes so we can get to 6. Anybody opposed or abstaining? I guess you could say Jeff is abstaining because he's detained right now. So
Yeah.
Who seconded that motion?
I did, John.
Oh, Dawn, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay, so we got through that one. This is just a bunch of semantics, but as our rules were in effect, we have essentially had an election that was not to our policies and procedures. So I would like to just to keep the legal beagles at bay, entertain a motion unless somebody has developed an aspiration to upset the dynasty in the last month, that would entertain a motion to confirm the slate as part of this annual organizational meeting.
I moved.
Who was that?
Tom,
Second.
I can't see everyone. Thank you.
and a seconded by John. Any discussion? Everybody in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Anybody abstaining? I guess Jeff is technically abstaining. Okay, takes care of that one. So in this wonderful little document that we just perused through, there is a paragraph about being familiar with the conflict of interest policy that the town has. I linked it to the agenda. I assume everybody can read, and we'll do that. I'm not sure if there's any more to say about that than that. The next item is on the underneath that section is a vision for the planning commission, and hopefully Jeff can join us because he's got some questions and looking for some guidance or looking to offer some guidance too. But as we are moving from, so I was on the planning commission and the zoning board in the mid '80s, I guess it was. And we would have these meetings and it's like, okay, what hat are we wearing? And the planning commission was basically to fill out that regulatory aspect, and it was not very active. When I came back on this board a couple of years ago, the planning commission was doing site plan review and stuff. So there's a lot of quasi judicial hearings and that sort of thing, which has gone to the DRB, and now we've become sort of a think tank. And so as we end up moving forward, we've started a discussion about the implementation plan and what all that means. But I think it might be good to take a few minutes and stop and think about what makes sense of where we go. There's Jeff and I have been talking about asking the select board, and there's a draft email that I floated around, asking them not only to look at their implementation task, but also offer some commentary on a more visionary aspect for the planning commission. And there's probably should be consideration potentially as well for public input as well. Those are just a couple thoughts. So I think you may want to take a few minutes and kind of bat some of that around about where we think we're going to go or need to go, and how aspirational we want to be. Oh, there's just crickets.
Yeah, not a lot of energy tonight for some reason. Everybody's kind of. I'm not really sure what you mean by how aspirational do we want to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
So Jeff,
Yes,
now that you're back, we're on to item 3E, which is the vision talk, and I just explained a little bit about my experiences on a planning commission, which are gapped and short, and then the transition from a plan review function to more of a plan or strategic planning function. And the fact that, you and I have been talking about getting input from the select board, maybe more on a visionary point of view. And then I had also mentioned community input in some sort of fashion, and we got to that point, and then there was crickets. So,
Kevin, do you want to stop sharing the procedural document if we're all done with it?
I can do that. Thank you.
there we go.
I'll learn how to do this about the time that we reach herd immunity. So, maybe we can break this down a little bit. We sort of talked about the implementation plan, which, if you look at the fact that it's within the town plan that's been adopted, there's certain efforts seems like there should be going forward with that. Um, some of it's pretty tactical. Obviously, there's other organizations that need to be involved. And is there, um, maybe the discussion point needs to start out is what do we do beyond that or for that or whatever, Tom.
Guess I'm missing where we're heading with this. It also seems to me that in some of the documents that we poured over here in the recent past, including some tonight, those are our marching orders and we just need to follow them. Along with what we've said is that the things that we've talked about, the other bodies have to do and what our missions are there too. So what are we building on something more or is this something that we've already, all we need to do is follow?
Good point. That's basically what I think. I think we need to. Seems like we'd want to flush that out a little bit. We've got, and if I understand what you said, you're kind of leaning towards. We've got a hefty lift with the implementation plan that's already laid out before us. What other things do we want to do? Or
Excellent. That's exactly right. I think we've got a pretty good load on the implementation plan already. So I think maybe we ought to concentrate on that and say, what are our steps toward accomplishing it?
okay.
I mean, there could be things, it seems like if there's something, okay, you're talking about aspirations, this is what we would like to eventually add to the, whatever you want to call it, the list of all of the things we're doing. Not that we're adding it now, but this is something that we are considering. Like if somebody has ideas and we just want to sort of put them in the public domain, or you want to have it there so that as we complete things, hopefully, we may consider adding something else. Because we don't want good ideas to just not be even brought up because we already have so much to do.
So the way I see it is that we have a map, we have a ship. Are we going to plot our own course, or are we going to have someone else plot it for us? If we're looking for direct input in that way, or are we just looking to see if there is a higher order priority that we are trying to identify in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, where this goes, but it strikes me that it would just be interesting for us to hear what does the select board see as the priority issues for the town in the next year, 2, 3 years? Just to hear. I mean, is it housing? Is it transportation? Is it Parks and Recreation? I don't know how they would do it, but presumably the select board has an idea of what is most important for the town. And I think it would just be interesting to hear that and see and figure out maybe for ourselves where we fit in that. Because we have a lot of different things we can work on. And it would be good if the priorities were meshed, or at least to hear what they're thinking. And that's hence a conversation with the board. Doesn't have to be anything more than that.
Is a conversation like that easier if something is laid out beforehand? If we were to say, these are our priorities, does that concur, or is it best left open-ended?
I think you could do that. I think that's not a bad idea to say, these are the things we were thinking about. What do you think about it? What are your priorities for the town? That seems perfectly reasonable. We give them something to chew on anyway.
Yeah.
Right. I think going forward, it would be to everyone's advantage if we were, maybe not all exactly on the same page in the same sentence, but at least if we're in the same book, and I think that would save us a lot of time and a lot of back and forth. And I can say I will offer up again. I know a guy on the select board. Actually, it's a girl, but I have a connection.
Um, um,
And this whole piece that you included with your email today looked like kind of a draft to the select board. Is that the case, or is it just, in other words, it appeared like it was like, okay, select board, we're working for you. What do you want?
so yeah, it's a draft that Jeff and I had penned up for discussion as part of this item. And obviously we've put it into this discussion to see what the entire commission appetite or interest or perspective is as we or if we go ahead and engage with the select board.
I think it would be constructive to hear what their thinking is, and we can fashion our own path from that.
So you would opt, as I enter from what I'm hearing, you would opt for more of an open-ended discussion as to us laying out a structure then?
Well, I think we've kind of sounded like we're kind of groping here a little bit, and I think, helpful for me to know what the select board views as our path. And then we can construct our path from that. We already know we've got items on the implementation that we've got to do. And so it'd be good to have a little bit of guidance beyond that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is go ahead and to the select board.
Go ahead and what?
Something similar to what you've drafted here to the select board. See
Okay,
what they have to say.
okay.
I don't know if they're even thinking about what we do. Maybe not.
Well, let's put it in front of them then.
It's an offer, right? I mean, they can say, just go ahead and do whatever you want. I doubt that will say that, but I don't know if they've got a lot of things to think about, but to say, okay, we're here, we're working with you, we work for you. Is there anything that, we should know about where you think things should go? I don't see the harm in it, and maybe you'll learn something.
No, and I know they'd appreciate the input. I can say that with some certainty.
Bill, I'm sorry, somebody was, Tom?
No, I think that's agreeable. Just let them know we're here.
Yeah. Bill, do you want to comment?
Well, these are difficult questions because you can make it as complicated as you want. And I would say it also raises the question of the role of separate boards and the individuals on those boards. I think people have different opinions, but my opinion is that we are quasi-independent. Obviously, we take in careful consideration of what the select board wants, but at the same time, the select board it's not like a regimented army. Two extremes again. We would get agendas, marching orders, tasks from the select board. One extreme, the other extreme would be we wouldn't care at all what the select board said. I always hope we end up in the middle. We we try to help, we try to do our best to help the select board achieve their goals. But at the same time, we include our own views and our own perspectives. That's how we get a good plan and good policies. So it's a mix.
I agree. I think that's, I was hopefully trying to make that point a little bit ago, and I maybe threw in a cliche instead, but I agree 100% with Bill that, we need to maintain our autonomy and our independence, but at the same time, we all we all should be working toward the same goal. And at the end of the day, we are all on the same team. We're different divisions, but we're all one town and we're all one team at the end of the day.
Okay, so heard balance. I've heard let's go talk to them. I don't think I've heard don't talk to them. Or have I? I just didn't hear it.
We're just looking for input at this point, not let's go talk to them and do exactly what they tell us they want us to do. I mean, we just want
I
their
don't think
input
anyone's
at this
contesting
point.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so,
It's more an exchange of views.
Yep.
Informational. After all, they're the ones who have to, vote on things and appropriate money and so forth. We can't do that. In the end, that's their responsibility.
So, I think it was Tom was saying, send the email. Is anybody opposed to doing that or have a concern about doing that? And then I guess the other comment is anybody thinking there's wordsmithing to be done based on what our discussion has been today so far? So, let's see, based on how you kind of presented it, Bill, are you thinking that the email's reasonable?
Yes, I think that's very reasonable. And I think I do like maybe it was John or maybe it was several of you, but the idea is that we do our best to understand each other and and we do our best to make sure we're working towards the same end, maybe on a slightly different pathway, slightly different order or priority, but essentially to the same end. I also like the previous comment that John made, or that Jeff made, to the effect that the select board is the leading representative executive branch in our town. And I heard one Webster describe it when comparing to a planning commission. He said, the select board plans with money. We plan with ideas and some regulations and some guidance. And I will add that the select board has the authority to appoint and under some circumstances remove members of the planning commission. So that helps give us perspective and helps reinforce why we want to pay close attention to what their priorities are.
Okay, Rob, do you have any further comment?
No, I don't have any other comment. I was just trying to figure out what everybody's appetite and thoughts on how to move forward with what this might be. So I'm good with whatever everybody wants to do.
Okay. I guess one thing that comes to mind is I think the closing paragraph on that proposed email says, how do you want to meet? You know, just email, chair, vice chair, groups. So do we want to get more firm and suggest a group to group meeting? I'm getting that sense from the discussion.
My thought is that however information can go back and forth, that's effective, because time is a critical resource that nobody has enough of. However it works best, I would be okay with. So
Okay. Anybody else? So
I
we'll
think
leave
it's reasonable.
Tom?
I think for efficiency, it might be good if just the chair and co-chair could be the ombudsman, so to speak, and get that information and pass it back to us rather than a crowd together.
Okay. Okay, so we'll leave that last sentence the way it is. Any other discussion, any comments about under the term visioning? Okay, we'll move on to continuing business. Another discussion item, communicating out of the implementation plan action items. We did send that out to, basically, there was a couple administrative ones, although Chris Purley as a zoning administrator got his, which is an operational aspect. The water department went to Valerie along with Valerie's as a town administrators. Rec department, select board, and the energy committee all received the whole clump of stuff. The select board did talk about it at their last regular meeting. It was a brief discussion with no action. I think it's on the table and sort of was maybe an ongoing thing to think about a little bit as they collect their thoughts on it. The Energy Committee, after I sent out the mini update this morning, came back and said that they are happy with what's laid out for them and they had no comments. The Conservation Committee reported back. They had a lively discussion at their last meeting, and that was included in that little mini update today. They discussed what their priorities would be and actually started utilizing the documents, which is, and I think I called it a draft document at the time, but it's a little preemptive, if you will, because we haven't formally adopted it, although there doesn't seem to be much controversy about that structure. So it's out. We've gotten feedback back from these different groups. So I think probably in the following meetings, we'll probably start looking at our own tasks and grappling with those. I don't have anything for new business. And then I guess the last thing is public
Could I ask
comment.
a question, Kevin?
Go
Something.
ahead.
Remember we had talked at the last meeting that the plan wasn't finally approved until the Regional Planning Commission approved it?
Correct.
And so did Chris was going to send it, I think, and
Chris sent it.
did have we heard anything? Do we know?
I have not heard, Chris has not discussed any fines and I haven't heard anything back directly from them. Bill looks like he wants to raise his hand.
I'm just resting my elbow. But I would say that the regular or the customary protocol is that a town submits its plan to the Regional Planning Commission. Then there's a special committee called the Local Governance Committee, I believe, of which several members from representative towns are members. They then will hold a hearing, probably in Bristol, and invite the general public from the county, others, including residents of Bristol and the surrounding towns, but frankly, anybody from the county. Usually there aren't many attending. Oftentimes there's only one or two, and sometimes more. And basically takes testimony on whether the plan, our plan in Bristol, is compatible and compatible with the original plan. And it's rare for that not to be the case, but it's a provision in the state law that was passed in 1989. So it's an exercise that's necessary. Then they report to the General Commission, and the General Commission votes. It's very rare for the General Commission to not deem our plan compatible. One other addition, the staff, and that's probably what's happening right now, the staff at the Regional Planning Commission reviews our plan and prepares comments for the committee. So it could take a little while, maybe not a long time, but it could take a few weeks.
I was just curious, because I'm not familiar with the process. Thank you.
So I guess the other thing to think about with that, are we going forward out of sync with that review, or does,
Well, as a matter of fact, once in the past, I think we went for several years without that. So a few weeks isn't going to do any harm.
And did anyone notice, Bill?
Eventually we did, and we apologized, and we were forgiven.
okay. So with that, I'll just entertain public comment if we've got any from our public. If Jim's okay, we've come to the end of the list here, and I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Oh, wait a minute, Jim.
Before you do that, you guys do have a liaison with the select board. There is
Yes.
a member that assigned, you guys should get in touch with that person, or Valerie, cut a lot of time short.
Yeah, that's Michelle, and I've had some conversations initially with her, but quite honestly, I haven't tied real tight with her. But yeah, Michelle Purley is our liaison.
Yeah, it might be good to, pin it down and get her to attend a meeting with you guys. So
Yep.
you can do a lot in a short time instead of
Good
going on
point.
and on. Okay,
Good point.
good job, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
So I'll entertain.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go.
Oh, who was that?
Rob
Thank you.
and Melissa seconds. I can't imagine there's any discussion, but is there? Everybody in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? So unanimous. We're all done.
Right on time.
Yes, there we go.
Thanks, folks.